everybody, to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast that looks at gaming with a big old feminist lens. So we are here today. I'm Caroline, joined by Matt, Alex, and Jem, even though I haven't put your names on, but that's because they've changed some of the things in Restream and I can't figure it out, but I'll get there eventually. Anyway, before we talk about what we're going to talk about today, I have an off-topic thing to discuss. Just Games Master is back, which I'm very excited about because I know that I have, in old lady fashion, lectured you all before about do you remember back in the day when to find out how to get through a game, you had to watch Games Master and Patrick Moore's giant head would tell you what cheats to use. So Channel 4 have rebooted it, which is very exciting. I've watched the first episode. It's okay. I would say it is no better or no worse really than the original Games Master.
Who's presenting it?
A Scottish man whose name I didn't catch, but who seemed all right. He seemed all right. He made knowing jokes about how different Games Master might be these days compared to ye olden days and stuff like that. And we've had the people taking part in challenges were women, non-binary, black, white, everything. It's been very sort of updated Games Master. There was even a small child beating a grown adult woman at Splatoon, so that was fun to watch. But yes, so I'm recommending we all give the new Games Master a go. Obviously, they don't have to ask for cheat codes and walkthroughs anymore because you can look that up on the internet. But Sir Trevor McDonald, is he, sir?
Yes, I think so.
I'm going. Yes. It's doing a very good job of being the Games Master head, and I like as well they haven't changed the design much. The design is actually very similar to the original Games Master, so I'm enjoying that. So that's good. Anyway, that's just my little personal thing I wanted to talk about there. Anybody else got any little personal comments they wanted to add? Right.
I've fallen in love with George Orwell. That's all I want to add.
Yes. Matt's having a love affair with a early 20th century novelist, so it's good. Right. So today we are looking again at board games, or I've decided to widen this out to a not computer-based games. Because I suppose that when we talk about card games, D&D games, stuff like that, they're all board games in their own way, but some people get really finicky about this. And if there's not an actual board, for you to put actual meeples and pieces on, but yeah, fine. Anyway, so we've talked about this before. We had a really nice discussion led by Jem, who I'm going to come to when I've run out of things to ask people about, and hope that she has her leftover questions from before. Main thing I wanted to ask first of all was, since our last show, since we last talked about board games, has it pushed you to try something new? Have you tried a new game? Have you gone back and tried an old game that you maybe hadn't played for a while, that the discussion had made you think of? Any of those sort of things happen for anybody?
My sister likes playing board games. And she and my mum are working in a charity shop occasionally, and so there's a multitude of oldie-timey board games and puzzles. I have a massive shout out to puzzles. I've found tremendous pleasure in doing big puzzles the last month or so. They're just wonderful. They're so simple in everything in life, because if you sit down with it, it can only get easier, because you've got 1,000 pieces. Every time you put one piece on, that's one piece less for you to find, and you're guaranteed an end result. So it's very, very good for mindfulness. So there's the puzzle side of it. And my sister and my mum played a game that was sort of like Battle Tetris, where you take the Tetris shapes and you have a imagine a Scrabble board, but instead of putting tiles on it, you put Tetris shapes, and you've got to try and box your enemies in. And it was really fun. But maybe we'll talk about this at some point. There's I think people get traumatized in childhood a lot when it comes to family events. and having to it's the same like with like Christmas time stuff, having everyone around, you fit into old patterns. I hate like when you get dragged back to an old pattern that's quite toxic. But I hope that I hope that it will lead to more of these kinds of games for us.
Was good, and yeah, as you say, I think we might talk about that more later. But I think there is always a danger with that. But the puzzles, I'm a big puzzle fan myself. If you got yourself a big board to hold it in yet, you got yourself a case. You need the big 5,000 piece case. Sorry, man.
5,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jesus. I've just got a big A3 cardboard bit of cardboard.
Fair enough. I got the one that means
too small for the 1,000-piece puzzle.
Just on the edge.
Yeah, after my partner got sick of me taking up surfaces with puzzles and then forgetting about them for months and going, I'm not really in the mood, but that meant that table wasn't usable for a month. I've now got a case that folds up, seals up nicely, and goes under the sofa. So there you go. See, highly recommend. Alex, you tried any new board games?
I haven't yet, but I have noticed in my trip to my local comic and game shop in town, a lot of the board games we talked about, I was like suddenly aware of. I was like, oh, there's Wingspan and all sorts of other ones as well. And so I'm carefully browsing that section now in mind to buy something in future, definitely. But yes, I just haven't got around to it yet, but I will. Yes,
I have played a lot
good.
more Wingspan actually, and I still recommend that. I've also, once you know the rules well enough, then you can play it drunk. It doesn't really work like explaining it to somebody drunk, I would expect. But yeah, no, definitely awesome. Jem, how about you? What's changed? Have you tried anything new?
I've got loads to say.
Yay!
So I don't have to add in any questions because I can't find my own questions. So, so jigsaws. We always have a Christmas jigsaw. So jigsaws for me have generally been a festive thing rather than a sort of general thing. Although they are something that has come out. If somebody's been ill or something, it's been quite a good thing to do. But yeah, we always had a festive jigsaw, which the idea was that it went out when the Christmas decorations went out, which unlike everyone else in the world, in my house that happens sort of in the last week before Christmas. So and then you would have to complete the jigsaw, the Christmas jigsaw, before the 12th night, and everything went away. And if it wasn't completed, it went away incompleted. And I think the sort of one that we only kept one of them, and that was the Mappamundi, and that lived. It was always going to be framed and hung on the wall, but that never happened, and it just lived on a big board under my parents' bed for about 5 years, just gathering dust before somebody decided that enough was enough and they checked it out. So jigsaws have definitely been a family thing, and I think they are very good for mindfulness. And it's so nice just to stand there and just like whenever all the chaos of Christmas is going on, it's quite nice just to have that calm of just finding where that piece goes. And I think it's great for the completionists amongst us. Fortunately, my husband is a massive completionist, and so therefore he gets a bit obsessive about them, and you put a jigsaw out and then he doesn't leave it. And so
I was going to say, when Matt said this before, though, the worst thing is, of course, if one of the pieces has fallen under the sofa, and then the maddeningness of I can't finish it, and I have had that before, and yeah, there's possibly nothing more traumatic, really.
Absolutely.
I have a jigsaw question to put to you then. So, I'm trying to remember how to phrase this because I can guess Caroline's reaction, and Jem's just told me Daniel's reaction. Do you ever half do a puzzle or do a bit of a puzzle and then put it back in the box and throw it away? Do you ever not complete puzzles?
No. And my other half does. He has lost interest in a puzzle before, which I have then gone, right, I'm going to finish this. He has then tidied it away after 2 months of me not finishing it, which is why we then had to buy the case. But they have always ended up finished. But I do find very, very satisfying once they are finished. completely wrecking them and throwing the whole thing
Yeah.
apart and putting it back in the box.
That's very Zen, though, isn't it? That whole thing about like creating something and then just destroying it.
The
It's
mandala,
it's a Zen type of thing.
See, what I've been able to allow myself to do is, rather than thinking, oh, you sit down, you need to finish it, putting that artificial pressure on myself, I've done like a third of a puzzle and then just gone, I'm hating doing this. And then going, well, there's no rules saying that you can't just throw it in the back in the box and then get another one that you enjoy, because the point of it is the enjoying of the doing it, rather than the hating it and then it's done and then you forget about it.
It's a very healthy way of looking at it, Matt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do it with craft
the right
projects for sure.
I do that with movies. It's like if I'm hating it, there's no reason I have to sit through another hour and a half of this. But no, puzzles, it tends to be more like suddenly I'll get every single mug and pot and everything out of the kitchen and start sorting into smaller and smaller categories. And so like I'm like, eventually the logic approach to this will get me through the whole puzzle. And then I have them lined up by which one's got 3 sides, which one's got 2 sides, it gets to really super levels. But I find it so calming and freeing because I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not getting distracted by anything. It's the one thing where I can completely focus, so I do really like it for that.
That's something we should do a let's play of. A year long series of Caroline doing a 5,000 piece puzzle.
Yeah,
won't take me a year, mate.
That is a long. Well, yeah, maybe.
But yes.
I think it's interesting though, because like when you talk about jigsaws, people always often talk about that as being a solo thing, whereas for me it was so much a family thing, and it would be about, you'd leave the puzzle. And I actually feel similar about Animal Crossing, which I know obviously isn't a board game, so it doesn't really belong in this conversation, but I have the same thing in my family at the moment, because there's 3 of us playing it, and it's lovely because you go away and things are over here, and you come back later and things are over there, and in some scenarios that would really annoy me, but in other scenarios like the jigsaw puzzle and Animal Crossing, it's fun. It just gives it this sort of evolution and family play.
You don't have anyone
to just. Sorry,
I was going to say, you don't have anyone who's like the vulture though, who like swoops in when you've done most of the jigsaw, turns up and goes, I'll just put that in and finishes it.
Yeah,
that makes me angry.
Yeah, no, that is really frustrating. That was the point I was just about to make.
I'm sorry.
After having been told I was healthy on one aspect of the puzzle, if someone touched my puzzle without me saying so, I would kill them. So I'm not perfect. I do have a few flaws.
So good for your well-being as long as nobody gets involved.
So originally we were asking Jem, have you been playing any different board games?
What I did want to say is that after our last discussion about this, I did actually go out and buy. I can't say. I don't know if they're listening.
Oh no!
Anyway, a certain game that we've already mentioned this evening, and it's a family gift, and I bought it in the summer as a family gift, and then, well, actually, my mum bought it but it was a joint thing. But anyway,
and Cards Against Humanity.
No, but we've been saving it for like a rainy day to explore it. But it was totally off the back of the conversation that we'd had, and I'm very excited to try it out. And I'm thinking it's going to be like a good Christmas board game, because that's the other thing. I mean, I think we talked about that last time. Board games were very much a Christmas activity for me as well. We'd always get a family board game and then all fall out over it, over some of us not wanting to play it and others cheating.
Yeah. And some people taking it too seriously. That can be a problem as well. Yes,
definitely.
There's a lot of things that can go wrong. I mean, I think I've been wanting to play more board games, but obviously still not seeing a huge number of people in person. So therefore I haven't really had a chance to get any of those the bigger play things going on. But what I have been doing is I am now playing a lot more D&D. And I now have 3 5e Dungeons and Dragons games on the go, 2 of which I'm a player in and 1 of which I'm running.
Was that confusing?
To be honest, I just reuse a lot of characters. Settings. So my character that got killed very early in one of the games that I'm playing has then gone on to be a major NPC in the game that I'm running, because I was like, well, I created that character, I might as well keep her going. But what I'm finding really interesting about it is that, obviously more so possibly than you do with video gaming, with these sort of games, you get those human dynamics, people group dynamics. There was actually an article in The Guardian the other week about how Dungeons and Dragons is helping people learn how to socialize again post-pandemic, because we've all forgotten how to communicate with each other, which is partially true. But that's like, why am I saying that's silly? That's completely true. But I have noticed that it's so different, the groups that I'm in. So one group is all immediate family. And that's the one that I've been playing with for the longest. And one of the reasons I wanted to play with other people was to get a feel for what it's like to not be bullied by your brother while you're playing a game, and to not have to deal with all those sort of fun family dynamics that you mentioned earlier, Matt. So then I've got another group of people who I know purely through playing through RPG, and we're quite polite to each other, and those games are very sort of strictly run, and they start on time and they finish on time and stuff like that. And then I've got one that is a group entirely of women and non-binary people, and that one is, I have to say, what I'm having the most fun in, because I suddenly feel like, it does literally feel like a safe space. It does actually feel like the place where I can be most myself and relax and stuff. And I think it's one of the things that, I don't know if we talked about this enough, about how board game playing gives you that chance to explore games, but in a much more human fashion with people. Don't know if anyone else has.
Two things you just made me think of about. One, the learning to socialize with people again, that has a massive physical element, because the world is built for able-bodied people. Socializing was built around pubs, clubs, and meeting people out in the world. And then so that brings like there's the physical, actual the being there, and there's the vocal side, and so we can see each other's faces, but we can't touch each other. We can't interact physically. And maybe think that's a good thing, because people go, yeah, you can live like this. There are plenty of people who live like this because of disabilities or various other issues, and sometimes it's just easier. It's far easier for us to do this than us to all get together in Sheffield or something. And then that instantly made me think of, it could be useful in a sort of a physical boundary way, because from now on I don't want to shake anyone's hand anymore, because then that's such a social pressure. So if you get rid of the idea of like your obligation to have physical contact with anyone, that might have an impact. Because if someone doesn't want to shake your hand, they're not going to want you to grab their ass, are they? And it's unlikely. And yeah, so that's the first thing that made me think of. And then just off the end of that's a thought to explore down in another entire other episode. That's just what it made me think of. And then reminded me about what Jem talked about in our arcade game session about these kind of games, rather than playing a character like on your own in a game where you're playing a character sort of on your own, being able to play a certain character in a public setting. So, for example, if one of your non-binary friends, maybe they're choosing to play as a specific gender or a specific sexuality, then that's a way that they can explore and live that in front of people, so that they're being seen. And the value of being seen as yourself is immeasurable to combat like the shame and stigma that society tells you should feel, rather than acceptance.
And I do take your first point as well hugely, because I'm very much hoping in the post-pandemic world you don't have to hug and kiss everybody which was a thing that had become very much part of society. Where as soon as like, oh hi, no, that's a thing I'd like to leave for people.
A fist bump is enough.
And
fist bump is fine. It works for everyone.
Fist bumps actually cause me more stress than anything because there's an accuracy that I just don't have, and I'm just gonna miss every time, and it's just like that stress. There was a guy who used to collect money at the Tesco's that I used to go shopping in all the time in Leeds. He's a brilliant. If you ever go to the Tesco's in City Centre Leeds, right, everybody knows this guy. He's always there collecting for different charities, but he's the friendliest guy in the world, and he's lovely. And he would quite often offer a fist bump for me, and it was just the most difficult social situation I've ever had to deal with, but he's lovely. And I got better at it eventually. We sort of touched on it a bit there. I was thinking about these places that one of my friends has moved up north in the last 2 years, and because obviously not at the best of times it's hard to make new friends as an adult, and what he did is he's joined the local gamers group who meet in a pub and play board games. He's also joined the local Warhammer type games group as well, who meet in the same pub. Apparently there are some people who are members of both groups. There's some sort of political tension between the two of them.
That could get awkward.
I think there is some degree of it's fine to turn up to the board gamers group with a sort of wargaming thing with you, but it's not okay to turn up to the wargaming group with a board game, is like how he described it to me, the social mores of all this and the etiquette. But he's been going and it's been thinking, and I was thinking about that. How would we feel about, have you ever done that? Have you ever gone to any of these local gamer groups? Because there's loads of them all around the country. And would you ever do it? Alex, would you ever consider going and sort of joining a local gamer group like that?
I mean, yeah, I haven't actually done it locally, but I know there are plenty that are around locally. And since the aforementioned gaming and comics shop came into town, it's really popular. You often see people in there playing like Yu-Gi-Oh! And whatever else. All sorts of stuff. I knew you'd be excited about that. You love Yu-Gi-Oh!, don't you? Yeah. No, but yeah, it's certainly something I would consider if I ever moved somewhere new. Because, who doesn't love gaming? And as we all love gaming.
I mean, I just was wondering as well about the awkwardness, though.
But yeah, I mean, it would be pretty awkward to start with, but I just think of it like, as in it was like a going to university scenario. You're all going to feel awkward. Like, I mean, obviously there'll be people that know each other better if they've always been there, but you've just got to treat it like you've got to dive in at the deep end and just go do it, because you never know who you meet, and usually, hopefully, it will turn out to be a really good and positive thing to do.
Matt, would you give it a go? I know you were thinking about getting into 40k Warhammer type stuff.
It's absolutely something I'd consider. This is pinging off so many interesting, fun thoughts we'd have. One, I listened to a true crime podcast. They talk about criminal athletes, and there was this one guy who went to meet his, I think it was his girlfriend's father-in-law or something, and like within 3 days, they were smoking crack together, just having a whale of the time smoking crack, and they were pointing out, how do you get from hi, nice to meet you, to smoking crack? Because it made me think a little bit of what Caroline, you were saying about your different D&D groups. You behave slightly differently with each one, and I know that I have the parts of me that are the equivalent to like that crack, someone smoking crack with me. And I know it takes you have to go through a lot of processes to gently come and find people like that. But so I live in hope that I will find plenty of people like that. I have in the past. And then you instantly made me think of, when you mentioned politics, it made me think, I can't stand that bullshit. And I can't stand the performative stuff like shaking hands and hugging and kissing. If that's done in general, then it's pointless. It's performative. It doesn't add anything to it. If you hug someone that you care about, that's substantive. You just go, oh my god, it's you, hug, kiss. That's awful. And you made me think of how going back to thinking about like the physical thing, being able to, we're taught that we're supposed to apologize for like enforcing our own boundaries. So if someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, hi, I'm so and so," and they hold out their hand to shake and say, "Sorry, I don't like shaking hands," that's completely fair. And now you can say, "Oh, it might all the germs. It's a terrible idea." But being able to normalize not like giving part of yourself, making part of yourself available that you don't want to, that you feel pressured to, is that needs to be, and that's why like I like being still, because it's easier to be yourself when you're still. So if you sit in a room full of 6 different people who have never met each other, and you're able to stay still and not be stressing and looking about and looking for social cues, then you can just sort of relax into the space and be yourself authentically. Whereas what everyone's instinct is to do is to, unless you're a complete arrogant, cocky arsehole, unself-aware arsehole, then you're often looking for cues from people. But you can just go somewhere and just relax as yourself, rather than having to be a different version of you everywhere you go. That is my idea of hell, tearing myself into being a different person, none of which are myself. Those are the like, that's the standards that I set for myself, because it's how I keep myself healthy and happier as I can.
Well, I think that's the advantage of some of board game groups, just board game nights as well. I know a lot of pubs do them as well, as it's just sort of, it sets up a social boundary for you to live in. It sets up a sort of social experience for you to have without having to worry about all of these things. I was going to ask Jem, but she's taken a sip of her tea. Right, there we go. Jem, are you you ever been to one? Ever tempted to go to one?
Oh God, it just sounds like my worst nightmare. When you said about it, I was just like, no.
Not doing that.
But I think Matt made a good point, and I was thinking, yeah, actually, there is quite a lot to be said for having a structured social environment. See, I mean, I did spend many of my teenage years hanging out in pubs and clubs, and that seemed to work for me, because that seemed to be what I wanted to do on a weekend. But as an adult, I have found it increasingly challenging in those environments. And through my mudding years, we used to go to pubs and meet up with other mudders and talk to them. But even that environment where I knew people and I was meeting people and we had something in common to talk about, I still found that really quite stressful. And so for me, kind of going into those social environments cold is a really challenging thing. Whereas I think, having a sort of structure of like, we're here to play a game, or is actually something that allows for that. It's like walking socializing, it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? Like, you're walking along, so you're thinking about that.
You're
but you
saying
can
walking
chat
socializing like it's a thing that we all know about.
I just mean, like, where people get together and they go, let's go out for a walk, and you go for a walk in groups. You have like a group that goes for a walk, and then you meet people along the way, and it's a way to talk, because you've not got that, you're not facing each other, you're not sitting there talking to another human being in that kind of like almost confrontational manner. You're actually like just kind of walking and talking, and so it takes a lot of the pressure off. And I think those kind of gaming groups could offer that same setup. And I've been doing more D&D as well, and I'm currently in I'm in a D&D group and a DOD, which is the Swedish version.
Dungeons or Dragons.
Yeah, I can't say.
How's your Swedish?
My Swedish is rubbish. Don't tell my mother-in-law. But dragons and demons is what it actually stands for. Drakor or demons. Anyway, and both those groups there are people that I don't know that well, or that I haven't met that many times or at all in real life. So it's been quite an interesting. Both of those have been online via video. So, but it's a nice way to get to know other people, because you've not got that pressure. And if you don't want to share personal stuff, you can just get on and play the game, and that's fine. But I think I would find it quite difficult to just turn up to one of these groups, especially as a nearing middle-aged woman, a mum, and all of that. I think I would feel really awkward walking into an environment like that, just because of where I am in my life at the moment. And I think I would need to be sure that it was a group of similarly minded people at the very least. And I think that's the other thing. It's not just I certainly wouldn't go down to the Warhammer group and turn up because I'm about 30 years too old.
I just thought of something to add to the end of my point. Also, thinking about physical spaces, if I was to go to one of those spaces, I'd probably get a feel for how happy I would be in that space if it was accessible to me, obviously, because I'd be wanting to go more and more these days in my chair. So if a place is not accessible, I'll know then automatically it's probably not going to be the best place for me. And if it is accessible, then I'd hope that the people that do go would be open-minded enough to be accepting of me coming in my chair, and you'd be able to get a vibe immediately from everybody involved, how they feel about that. And so that would be a kind of a teller for me, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I have gone to one of these groups in London before, quite a few years back now, because I've lived in the north of England for quite a long time now. So, I remember that just what struck me at the time was, there's women here. I'm not the only woman here, and I was thrilled about that. And I was like, But I now reflect on it. I'm like, yeah, but was a pretty white, middle-class, able-bodied group. In fact, I'm sure it was in the basement in an inaccessible basement of a pub where it was hell. But as you say, Jem, it's those sort of social awkwardness that comes with being a woman as well, of that sort of and the stereotypes that come with the certain type of gamer chaps. Where you do feel that it's necessary to point out you have a partner, and that no, I'm not interested in a relationship. I'm not here to try and pick people up. Please don't, boundaries, throwing up walls everywhere, because of the situations that we probably found ourselves in the past and stuff as well. So, but as I say, had a very positive experience. Everybody was very nice. I played Ticket to Ride. Nobody got into a fight, which is always good. And I did go and buy Ticket to Ride after playing it at a gaming group. So it has those sort of benefits as well. So I'll try not to put people off. I also have got a list of things that Matt has said that I'm now putting disclaimers on. Just want to say we don't have a problem with Sheffield. And we're not advocating smoking crack either. I just wanted to put those two things out.
I've come up with an alternative analogy.
Excellent, good. Okay. One that doesn't advocate smoking crack.
No, I don't. I never said I don't smoke crack. It wasn't me. It wasn't me going, I know this. I know this friend. So say for example, the four of us, we are intersectional feminists, and if you take one like hot button issue that we are very clear on, is we are pro-trans rights. None of us are anti-trans. We don't go, I don't know. We go pro-trans, on board. That's us, intersectional feminism. That is a long. Just saying you're a feminist. If you walk into a group of people and say I'm a feminist, odds are most people are going to look at you like, okay, and they're not going to be like that. But then if you get a row of people who say, I'm a feminist too, and then you get a couple of more, and you go, I'm a pro-trans feminist, and then you might lose another bunch. And so it's that cutting down, but trusting that you're cutting the chaff, and eventually you'll be left with a potent bunch, rather than so that's another thing where it's difficult as relationships are, but the trick is I think that the concept of till death do us part is extremely toxic, an extremely toxic pressure to put on any relationship, Because how many friends have you known from childhood who you spent maybe 10 years spending all your time with, and then you don't speak to them for years and years and years? It's okay to go, that I love that, I loved them, they were wonderful, but that doesn't have to last forever in order for it to be wonderful. And just trusting that as long as you keep on putting yourself out there and exploring opportunities, but at the same time making yourself the center of whatever you happen to be trying to do, then you can take your real self places, and then you'll attract people that like are attracted to your authenticness, rather than going, oh my god, I don't know anyone, what do I do this, what do they want, what do they want. It's very complex.
This is what badges are for. And stickers, Matt. You just need to put badges and stickers all over whatever you're carrying, and then people know what you stand for. That's why I walk around. So, like, you don't talk to me if you're not into that stuff. This is me.
It also makes it easier because it means you can. So if you meet 100 people, you can cut out a lot of them by like the lowest common denominator usually, or the highest common denominator. I don't know what but the fewest people. Being actively pro-trans it's quite a rare thing to find, sadly, and it's but you know that you're going to find it very, very difficult to relate to someone who is either on the fence, who could be brought along. They might be perfectly fine, but then people who are anti-trans or against it, then you can just and go, I'm not having any of that toxicity near me, because you have no obligation to accept toxicity into your boundary.
No. And of course, the nice thing in a board gaming group is that, you don't have to be the bestest of friends with everybody you're playing with. You are having the whole point is the board game creates a nice sort of social situation where it can bring people together, and sort of create really nice environments for getting to know people. And I think it's interesting what you were saying there, Matt. Well, I don't see that there's any pressure on people. I don't think when you meet someone or when you get to know someone, there should be any pressure at all that this has to be the bestest friends ever. When I talk about social awkwardness, I just want to make sure that everybody has a nice time. I think that's, for me, what's most important, that everybody's relaxed and having fun. And I think that that's what I mean when I say I'm trying to overcome those things in those sort of situations. But
I think that,
yeah,
I was going to say, well, I used to be really like overboard in that sort of camp of wanting everyone to get along, but then realizing that I was doing it for the benefit of other people, not for myself. That's the only thing I worry about in terms of like taking leadership roles in anything, for example, just to make sure that you're doing everything for yourself, and then that benefits other people rather than the other way around.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So board games then. Just we can sort out the entire psychology of the human race as we go along. But board games. So we haven't really talked about many specific board games in this episode, although from my reckoning we have mentioned Ticket to Ride, Wingspan, and basically Dungeons and Dragons and 40k Warhammer. There are, of course, many others. There is Settlers of Catan, there's Caverna, there's Agricola, there's Pandemic, which I know a lot of people have played this year. Weirdly, does there not? I mean, I've played Pandemic before the actual pandemic. Is it not depressing to play Pandemic during a pandemic?
We've been playing it. Me and Daniel and my mum have been playing it, and we're playing Pandemic Legacy. So you play a month, and then if you beat that month, then you go on to the next month, and you, each time you win, you get new skill sets and characters. You can keep the same characters through, or you can change them around at the beginning of every game. It's an amazingly different way of playing a board game, because you rip up cards and you stick stuff on the board and you write on it, and it just feels so wrong. It's like, when I first learned that you could highlight books and write in books, I was like, oh, you can't do that. So for me, it's just a bit of a, and we did actually we have recorded some of our games because I really want to share them with everyone, because it's just been such an interesting process. And no, it hasn't been depressing. It has occasionally things have happened and we've been like, oh, that's a bit close for comfort, oh, we hope that doesn't happen. But I think it's just actually been more relevant, more interesting, and also, like we were talking about, sort of like the social side of gaming, it also provides a non-confrontational way to talk about the things that are concerning us about the pandemic. So it's a very social situation, and it provides a way to discuss topics that might be quite stressful in a non-stressful way. So I would say yes, it is a little bit weird to be playing it right now, but it's also been a lot of fun. And my only sadness is that we haven't had time to play more of it. So we're only on February. We failed. No, we finished February now, and we won February, and now we're on to March next. But we failed our first February. We died.
Sticking with it though, it's like, so I had Risk Legacy, which is similarly has the permanent changes to the board game. You're meant to play it with the same group of people over and over again, and we came to the problem where the same person had won Risk Legacy too many times, and that gave them quite a few advantages, and then some other unnamed people, we all know I'm talking about my brother, right? Got a little bit salty about that and didn't want to play anymore. And we had to just so we never finished Risk Legacy, even though it's got like a thing at the beginning where you like sign the back of the board saying us three will play together and stuff. So maybe one day we'll get it out.
Well, in our pandemic game, pandemic, you play together against the game, so there isn't that conflict between the gamers. But secondly, when we were playing last time, we beat the game, but we realised that we could have done some other things to have sort of beat it better if we'd gone back a few steps, and we'd done something wrong. We realised that basically we hadn't done something, not just like, oh, I wish I'd done that, but like, oh, actually we should have done this and we hadn't done it. So then we had to have a really big debate about if we go back and we do it and then we lose the game, because there was every chance that we could lose it, because we knew what we were doing was going to take another turn round, and we knew that we could lose the game in that turn. So then we had a big debate about, like, if we go back and we redo it and we die, we fail in our next go round, are we allowed to revert back to the fact that we'd won it, or do we have to like take the new loss? And we decided we'd have to take the new loss, unfortunately. Well, I was outvoted. I thought we should be allowed, but but we did replay that second round. We did win it, so that was good. But I think it's interesting because then you're all kind of on the same side. You're not, you've not got that competitive stuff going on.
But
I think you do need. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you have to stick to the Grim rule. If you play Arkham Horror Living Card Game, they have the Grim rule, which is if you find yourself in a situation where you can't work out what the answer is from the rule books, which are pretty damned complicated, you have to go with whatever is worst for you.
Yeah.
That's Sorry, Matt.
I was going to say, certain rules it's good to have enshrined because it makes things simpler. One of which is like with chess. Once you've picked it up, you have to use that piece. Once something's happened, it's happened. You made the turn. Oops! We could have moved an army a certain pace over there, and then that would have changed the game. Nope. Already gone. Time flows only in one direction.
Yeah.
Like Jumanji.
Yeah.
And oh no, I was going to say Prince of
take
Persia,
backs.
but that's the wrong way.
Yeah.
That's against my point.
Retconning. Alex, what do you want out of a video game? No, we're not talking about video games. We're talking about board games. Alex, what do you want out of a board game? Do you want it to be cooperative like Pandemic? Do you want it to be competitive? Do you like them complex? Do you like them simple? What is it you're looking for?
It's a tricky question. I think generally my experience of board games tends to be ones that are competitive. When I think about them, usually they happen at Christmas with the family. And yeah, we tend to play ones where we compete against each other. So I'd be interested to try a cooperative board game, definitely. See if that's more of a positive experience. Not that competitive board gaming isn't positive, but it does get dicey at times, let's say.
Pardon the pun.
Mm,
Pardon the pun.
yes. Yes, see, I didn't even know I'd made it. All right, nice. I'm done for the night now. But no, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in trying the different types of board games for sure. There's like, I'm really loving this episode because I get to hear about all these games I haven't tried yet, and I'm thinking I really must make a plan and actually carve some time out to play some of these because they sound so much fun, and I'm sure I would really enjoy them. But yeah, no.
Well, you've got a shop now. That was the first
That's very
one that,
true.
when
Yeah,
I
I do
first
have a
started
shop.
playing board games,
Yeah.
it was Travelling Man. There's a couple of Travelling Man stores, one
Yeah.
in Leeds, one in York. I think there's a few other around the country, and they specialise in board games and also general nerdery. They have comic books and stuff like that as well. But I just went in there and talked to the people and just said, hello,
Yeah.
I'm one of these horribly trendy middle-class, middle-aged people who wants to start board gaming because the Guardian tells me that's what everybody's doing now. So could you point me in the direction of a board game? And they were very lovely
Oh,
about
that's
it. They
very
were
good.
really nice about it.
Yeah.
And similarly, when I wanted to start playing D&D, I just went in there and was just like, what the fuck do I need to start
Yeah.
playing D&D?
I
How
mean,
does one do this? I've seen it on Stranger Things. What do I actually do? And again, they just pointed me to the starter set, also to the big tub of dice, and was like, you may not find these interesting now, but at some point you're going to.
They will
no, I'll
become your
definitely have to
obsession.
take pictures and then send them to you guys and be like, which ones help
Oh,
me?
yeah.
And then I'll be able to update you. No, definitely. I'll have to look.
And then we'll just get into a big argument and big
Yeah.
debate about what.
Yeah,
And
we should
you'll
do.
be standing in the shop for half an hour waiting
Yeah.
for us to
We
work
could do
it
like
all out.
live polls on social media for
I mean,
all of our listeners. Be like, which one should Alex buy? Please tell us.
I definitely like my games complex,
Hmm.
but that's partly because I have. I don't know what, when I was this is going to sound really irrelevant, but when I was about 10, I started reading Georgette Heyer novels, and Georgette Heyer writes romance novels based in the 18th century. So again, this is going to sound really irrelevant, but one of the things about it is they have lots of characters and settings very early on. Like, it's one of those where in the first chapter there's like name, person, name, person, name, person, and you could spend ages going, oh, what's that? Who's that? And I very early on learned to just go with the flow. I was like, I'll figure it out. It'll make sense eventually. And that is a very useful skill when it comes to learning board games. It's not sitting there trying to learn all of the rules immediately, because especially some of the ones that are quite fashionable with adults, your Settlers of Catan, your Caverna, stuff like that, they have got vast quantities of rules. They have intimidating rule books like this, and then they usually have an appendix rule book as well, which is like terrifies people. But I think you just have to, you play and learn. You do your first playthrough. Don't worry if you lose. Don't worry if you do it wrong. It doesn't matter. I think that's the big thing with board games, because you do then learn it very quickly, more quickly than you think. And but I do think that is a problem, is that it's sometimes intimidating. Matt, what do you want out of a board game? What are you looking for out of a board game?
It's tricky because what I'm coming back to consistently here, which is something that doesn't my gaming life doesn't have a social element in it. The only like cooperative game that I've been doing is with you guys, is doing God of War with Alex, and doing the Little Hope playthrough, and I really enjoyed that. But it's mainly, I think, it's a fine balance between the activity and the people you're doing the activity with, because there are people who, it doesn't matter what you do with them, you're not really going to click. But I find, like, when you and I are doing God of War, we're able to have really interesting conversations while we're having fun playing this game that we both care about and enjoy. So it's sort of things have to come together for me to really enjoy things, and I like people you hang out with who you could be sat in the rain at a bus stop and have the time of your life with the right person. And I find gaming and social stuff are completely separate for me, and that's the way it's always been, really. So coming into a social world, I think just having something that looks a bit fun and isn't taken too seriously to give me an opportunity to know the people who I'm playing with. Because if the people aren't right, then it doesn't matter how good the game is. I don't think. I imagine this is all very social stuff for me, exploring new things. So that's why I'm talking as if it's a therapy session. But it's
That's fair enough. But also,
It's baby steps.
there are you can play one-player board games. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, you can.
Agricola, Caverna, Feast of Odin, which are all a series of 3, all have solo play modes where you basically you're playing against the game, against the cards. It's almost like solitaire with board games. Arkham Horror, the living card game, I mentioned that before. I absolutely love that game because that's a deck building game, and I love deck building games. But it's a deck building horror based in the world of H.P. Lovecraft game, and again, there's loads of ways of playing that solo, which are really enjoyable. And I was like, I know that there is this sort of expectation that like, oh, board games, you've got to play them with other people, but actually, like, I played Agricola on my own. Especially when Oscar's like just not in the mood. It's just like, I don't want to play Agricola again. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to play on my own. And it's genuinely satisfying and fun. Some people think it's odd, but I think it's satisfying and fun. So there are options for those of us who feel. What was I retweeted the other morning? Susie Dent's word of the day on Twitter was basically a very cool word for not wanting to hang around with other people all the time, and sometimes we don't, and having games to play without other people is well worth it. So Jen, you're my like board game buddy here. I'm expecting a very detailed answer from you on what it is that you are looking for out of a board game. What exactly do you want out of your board game?
Exactly right. I want all the cards to be purple. No. I do want to say to Matt that there are it's not quite the same, and it's not quite as good as what we're talking about, but there are online board gaming sites, so you can go. It's like Board Game Geek, I think, is one of them, and there's other places where you can go and actually play board games in an online environment with other people. And you can chat and socialize if you want to kind of go down that route. Might be a thing for you. Or you can play with friends, which is the other, people in the real world. Not that you can't make friends online, I'd just like to say. What do I want out of a board game? Well, I think it was really important what you said, Caroline, about how sometimes the instructions can be really daunting and really off-putting. And at the weekend 2 weeks ago, we introduced a friend of ours to Settlers of Catan. There was 3 of us who knew the game and 1 who didn't, who'd never played it before. And we just basically launched into the game, and we played it with the cards visible so that she could see what everyone was doing and how it all works. And I think, there are loads of games out there that it's actually really good to just play and learn as you play, and to be with a group of considerate co-players who can walk you through it and talk you through it and not bombard you with too much information. So I think games that have a good, simple concept are really great, that you can get in, that you can play over and over again, that you can pick up quite easily. You can play for an hour in the morning. I don't know. See, for me, it all depends on the circumstance as to what I actually want out of a game. So some games like Pandemic, which is this ongoing long-term game, Legacy. I also think you could play Pandemic on your own, actually, because you're playing a game. So you could control, you could use multiple characters. I do think it's good to have games that you can play by yourself, because there are times when you can't play with other people. I know that there's a whole heap of games that are designed for 2 players, because Daniel and I investigated that and got some really cool games off the back of that. I want a board game that suits every circumstance. I want board games to play with my family. I want board games to play with my partner. I want board games to play on my own. I want board games to play when I'm drunk. I want board games to play that are going to immerse me in a new world. I really like board games that have little figures that you can stack. I love that.
Yep.
Like you can play.
Satisfying meeple. Yeah.
I was saying one of the reasons I like Settlers of Catan is because I know it's Catan, everyone calls it Catan, but anyway, I like that game because every time somebody rolls a dice, everyone there's something goes on for everyone. So you don't have big long, you have to wait for 5 people to have a go before you get to do anything, and it's just tedious while you're sitting there waiting for everyone to do their thing. So I quite like games that keep you engaged. So yeah, I think there are games out there for everyone. I have a website that I go to, which I can't remember the name of, but I'm going to find it and make sure it gets shared in the link for this, because I think that it's really useful and has great reviews, and it's just yeah.
Anyway. So we've established what you want is a board game shop.
Hell yeah, that would be awesome. I would love to. No, because you see, I wouldn't want to play all the games, but I would love to have a really good friend who knew all about board games, and I could just go and hang out there. Yeah, that's what I want. Drink coffee.
Genuinely, if we were going to advertise anything on here, I would say it would be your local board game shop, because board game shops are run by amazing people who are friendly and lovely and nice, and they usually do run an evening where they will play test various things. And if you ask them and say hey, I'm interested in this, but are you going to do a play test evening of it, they usually just say yeah, why not, because they're looking for ideas like the rest of us. It's yay, there's a free idea, and people who come. And yeah, I think in getting to know and investing in your local board game shop is really important, and they are wonderful places. And I think that they are, I know this is you should say this about libraries or community centres, but I think board game shops are the centre of, it's Leeds is really lucky to have 2 amazing ones. The other one, I can't remember, I'm as bad as you, Jem, I can't remember the name of it, but it's I think it's Leeds Games Geek Corner. I know exactly where it is, but again, they are a lovely place. And as you say, Matt, it's lovely to see people being trans inclusive. They were raising money for mermaids, selling pronoun badges. Also, you can get pronoun D&D badges, which is particularly cool, and all these various things. And they're places that support the community, that are filled with nice people, and that are generally very approachable and lovely. So, got a little bit over the top there, but I was excited. Go and support your local board game shop.
You're completely right about...
Every library should have that. Sorry, I just want to say every library should have that, have a section in it. Every community centre should have a board game section. Sorry, Mac.
Well, firstly, don't worry about not liking books or big all those selections, because George Orwell worked in a bookshop for a little while, and he came out hating big piles of books. So you're quite right. Here's a quote for everything. Then it was funny talking to your insert name here with those great place. We can insert name here and cut that in afterwards. Thinking about and then thinking about games that I might want to play. Warhammer 40k it touches something in me, because I like games of skill, but there is an element of luck in. Because I like my favourite scenarios is when you get 2 people who are sort of equal caliber, and who could make all of the right strategic moves as it gets closer and closer, and then that's the only time when luck really comes in, that you can overcome luck with skill, but then at the end of the day, luck can still be the decider. I also like people who are relaxed but engaged, and they're paying attention and they're interested and they want to win. They don't care if they lose, but they want to win. And thinking about there are very few things that make me burst out laughing involuntarily. Fortunately, a lot of them happen here on the show, so I'm very, very pleased with that. But in terms of, I enjoy funny things, but there's only a very specific, like, small amount of things that have made me burst out laughing involuntarily, and that's the sort of surprise, the involuntary, oh, I wasn't expecting that. That's what I want to find in a game that I would play, something, because I spend all the time thinking and thinking about the things in my general vicinity. Then when I come on here and Caroline talks about getting wood in Valheim, then that just surprises me, and just.
I mean, frankly,
that's
it's the backbone of any survival game at all. So you're always going to hear that from me on any situation. Especially 7 Days to Die Alpha 20 dropping next weekend. Anyway, just get another plug in there. Right. Well, the good thing is that we've run out of time, because my wildcard question for this week was shit. So I will think of a better one for next time. But luckily, I don't have to use it because it's 8 o'clock now. So please go out there, support your local board game shops and people. Play board games, enjoy yourself. Play board games responsibly. Always at all times. And we are right. Okay, I haven't done this in a while, so we need everybody to like, share, and subscribe. We need people to go on to Apple Music if they listen to our podcast on Apple Music and leave a review, because apparently that's good. If we turned up on your Spotify Wrapped like breakdown of what everyone's been listening to this year, please make sure you share that on social media as well. That would be very good. Please share us on Twitter, YouTube, Facebooks, Instagram, Twitch. We don't have a TikTok yet, do we? We're working on it. We'll get a TikTok, but just share us with everyone. And if you do enjoy listening to us, please share. And it's been lovely talking to you all again. So, right, from everybody, goodbye.
Merry Christmas.